Which was the first character that hooked on? Not just a bit, but a character that was yours.
I don't know, in terms of a character, I guess the second season, I guess the lounge singer kind of business, yeah. That was it. I came in, I was dying, and I came in with half of a sketch written. And you're not supposed to do that, you know, it was really bad form. But I didn't have anything, and Tom Davis, they pass out all the scripts on a Wednesday, and everybody's doing all the sketches, and they're all finished, you know, and then they go and decide which ones they're gonna use. I said, oh, wait, I got one more here. So I just started doing it, you know, and I would show this, you know, this handwritten thing to, like, Danny or something when it was his turn to speak or when it was somebody else to speak. And people were laughing, 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 and then I'd turn a page and it was blank. There was no more, you know, and I just said, that's all there is, you know, and it's sort of like, that's all there is? So, but Tom Davis stood up and said, I will help Mr. Murray complete the script and show him the process that we use here on Saturday night, you know, so he helped me, and from that point on, we always wrote those sketches together.
A round of beers for you guys if you can guess the name of this song. Who's the black dick who's the sex machine to all the chicks? Shaft. You see, this cat Shaft is a bad mother.
Shut your mouth.
Well, I'm talking about Shaft. He's a complicated man. Nobody understands him but his old lady. John Shaft.
The critic guy.
Yeah.
The guy that was always talking about the Woodman and giving his own choices for the Academy Awards. Was that entirely yours? Did you do it in collaboration with anybody?
No, that was entirely, well, I was stealing it from various guys that did that kind of thing, you know. I mean, but I didn't write it. That was my own idea to, I just saw somebody do something and I went, oh, this is insane. You know, this is crazy. The way that they would personalize the whole thing, like, you know, just...
Yeah.
Like, as if they were friends with whomever they were talking about and could take any liberty because of that, you know. I would just say, you know, Barbara Bush is a dear friend, but she's a tramp and she knows that. I mean, they could say anything they wanted by saying she's a dear friend first, you know. But she's a whore and a bitch. You know, I mean, anything because she's a dear friend. And I'm saying this only out of friendship. Do you know what I'm saying? You know, about anyone, you know.
So, Woody, keep what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing, but don't get a swelled head, huh? And do me a favor, grow up, would you? Grow up! Nobody's out to get you, Mr. Paranoid. Let's see you out on the town. Someplace besides Elaine's, too, all right? Okay, all right, yeah. I'm being rough, but you can take it, Woody. You can... Woody. All right, that's the Woodman I know. That's better.
Now, I don't think I've ever heard you tell a joke.
A lie? Oh,
no, certainly not tell a lie, certainly not. But tell a joke or a punchline. Everything with you is attitude or perspective, and those things, I guess, are harder to do because you gotta really believe it all the way through.
Well, you have to have an attitude, I guess. Well, I don't really tell many jokes, you know. I mean, you meet people in a traffic jam and they say, hey, Bill, say something funny, you know, and I say, well, look at me for a minute and I'll come up with something. You know, I need a little bit of food to get going. Yeah, I don't tell jokes very well. My brother Brian is great, and basically when I have to tell a joke, I tell a joke that he has told me, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't really have many jokes. I have no Vegas act. You know, people say, do you do stand-up? Do you do Vegas or anything like that? And I realized I've got to prepare for the future when I will be immobile and I'll be working on a stool.
When you'll be at the Sands.
Right. And you get the money, and all they do is they wheel you back and forth from your room to the stage 3 times a night, starting around 11. You know, I saw Toadie Fields once do her act, and I thought that was pretty good. She'd lost her leg already at that time, and her act was basically built around the fact that she had only one leg, and she had like a closing song with special material that was written for someone with a wooden leg, and it was just crazy. And I just thought, I'm missing a point here by not having... I was very fortunate to have witnessed this sort of show business miracle, and to see that there was a possibility for anyone to make something work, as long as you had, like, Sammy Kahn or someone to write some special material to shape it for your own physical body or mental problem.
But even though you never played Vegas, you don't have a Vegas act, it's not like you haven't studied it. Like, when you were a kid, you and Brian and some other kids, I guess, in the neighborhood, were sort of in this club where you sort of mocked these Vegas guys or showbiz
No,
guys?
you're confusing me with Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland here.
Oh, that's right.
This was not in the neighborhood. We were full-grown adults who already knew how to break the law. But this was when we were living in New York, around the time we were doing the National Lampoon Show. And this friend of ours, Bob Tischler, we had what we called the Sammy Club, which was we would get together at this guy's house and we would watch the Sammy Davis Show, which was a spectacular show business freak show. And where people were constantly like breaking into tears and, oh, get over here, you know, embracing and falling apart all the time, you know. And we couldn't get enough of this because it was everything. None of us had made anything in show business, and we couldn't get enough of this show, you know.
So the Vegas guy, the lounge guy, Nick whoever, Nick Springs, Nick Rails, whatever the situation was.
Yeah.
I mean, years of study went into this guy, whether you realize it or not.
Well, there was a lot of, you know, there was just a lot of bad show business at that time. It was a miraculous period. The 70s is what it was. It was a horrible, some of the ugliest art, the most brutal architecture, the ugliest clothes. It was the 70s, you know, and that was sort of, it was just a really, you know, I think there was, you know how there are plates in the earth, you know, where
they shift?
there's like civilization on one side and not on the other. It's the 70s, sort of had that break around 1974 or 73, it sort of cracked. And the late 70s were the bicentennial
And a collision, really, where, you know, a younger generation had access, and Saturday Night Live was a good example of it, but all those old showbiz sensibility guys were still around and for the most part on the air. They're not mostly on the air anymore. And they were existing side by side, which made it so fertile for you guys.
Well, it was amazing to have, like, Milton Berle, host the show once. Well, there's a guy who really, I mean, he's been stealing jokes for, like, 70 years or something. You know, he's really been around forever, you know. To actually have that guy, and when we'd have these, like, showbiz guys on, you know, we just sort of surround them and stare at them, you know, and just go ahead, man. No, go ahead. We're watching, you know. It's like, no, keep talking. Keep talking. You know, you couldn't get enough of it. It was like it was like a late night feeding, you know.
What was he like? Did he relate well to you guys, or?
Well, he's a monster. You know, Berle was a monster, you know.
He was?
Yeah, yeah. You know.
Telling you guys how it should be done, or?
Well, there are a lot of guys that'll do that. I mean, I'll tell you how it can be done if you give me an opportunity, but...
I wish somebody would set me straight.
But he was, you know, it was just like he had his ways, you know, and he would set jokes and try to make them look like they just happened, you know, and stuff like that. You know, he'd say, all right, drop a crowbar right in the middle of my speech, you know. And we'd go, oh, okay, watch this. So somebody drops a crowbar back, says, oh, NBC just dropped another show, you know, and it's like, you know, it's like, hey, he's fast. You know? So that kind of stuff. I enjoy, I had to do a sketch with him where, you know, he was supposed to, it was some sort of a benefit for yeast infections or something like that. Some crazy thing that Rosie and Ann came up. And so he's supposed to come up on the stage to grab the microphone and say, make an impassioned plea. Well, you know, Berle does this thing where he goes to the back wall and comes from behind, you know, which is like vaudeville 101, you know. So we're going through all these rehearsals, and I see him every single time. I know he's going all the way back to the back and walking in behind you, which is just like a real cheap upstage move is what it's called. And so I just let him go, you know. So I just let him go, let him go, let him go, let him go. And, you know, we're going on. And I acted like, you know, I was just here. I just got here, you know. I don't have any idea. So we finally do the show, and I'm watching, and it's his cue to come on stage. And I know he's going for the wall, you know, to come from behind. And I just start walking right to the camera and fill up the entire frame. Hi, how are you? And just keep talking right to the lens. Well, the look of desperation on Berle's face, which I caught in the lens, as he finally fought his way past me to the lens, was great. It was just one of those fun things that you do to guys who think you don't have any clue, you know? It's just, sorry, Milty, don't know what came over me.
Bill Murray and Van Morrison warbling gently in the background.
What's the most frightening thing that ever happened on Saturday Night Live, where you thought this whole thing is going to unravel? Somebody forgets their lines, or they can't get the props in place on time, or...
Really scary? Frank Zappa being the host. No, I don't know. What was really scary? Well, yeah, well, there was one guest who was on who came back to host, and it was St. Patrick's Day week. And they went out on the street to host they do these films. Gary Weiss did these films out on the street, and this old guy used to be an actor here in New York, and he went to his old haunts. Well, his old haunts were like Sardi's, you know, and they're all bars, really. And so after about an hour and a half, 2 hours, you know, it was like, you know, it was like a black horse walking down the middle of Fifth Avenue.
I don't know this. I'm truly guessing. Was this Broderick Crawford?
Yes, it was. It was.
Thank you. Do I win a prize?
It was Broderick Crawford, and from Highway Patrol, and also Mice and Men, and a really great actor. So he was blasted, you know, just totally blasted. And it was on a Thursday, which was our first day of shooting, and he rolled into the studio here around 4:30 or 5, a couple hours late anyway, 5, you know, we start earlier. And he rolled in no kind of shape, and he said, "Don't worry, everybody. I'll be here 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'll be ready." You know, we said, "Brod, we start around 1, you know." so everybody was truly terrified, and we all, it was like, "Okay, Bill, you will cover Brod in these 5 sketches. Danny, you will cover Brod in these." So we had Brod covered every way but Sunday. Everybody had all his sketches. Well, in the Brod, not only nobody had to cover Brod, but Brod killed on air and was totally cool. And they fed him some line during the, there was some rumor about Hoover at the time, you know, and we had an FBI sketch about bugging the Kennedys and bugging Martin Luther King. And there was some line where Brod says to the other FBI guys, "Okay, boys, I'll see you in the sauna later." You know, which was just a throwaway, but which we knew would never get by the censors at all. So they mentioned it in the read-through on Wednesday, "Brod, we're not going to write this in the script, but if you think of it, boys, I'll see you in the sauna later." Well, in the meantime, since the time they mentioned that, he's been to all his hangouts in Manhattan and stumbled down Fifth Avenue in the St. Patrick's Day parade. No one's ever said a word to him because they're not even sure he's going to show up again. And at 11:51 on Saturday night, like 5 days later, Brod Crawford turns to these 2 FBI agents in blonde wigs and says, "I'll catch you in the sauna later, boys." And we all went, "Oh, he's such a pro. He's such a pro." He was a very good guy, really a nice guy. Well, what the heck? It was St. Patrick's Day, and he was drunk, so what, you know?
Chevy Chase was on here a few years ago, and he said that Belushi was better in Second City and other places, actually better than even at his best on Saturday Night Live. Would you concur with that?
Well, something like that, yeah. I think John Belushi was the best stage actor I've ever seen.
Why?
He just, when he walked on a stage, you could not look at anyone else. You couldn't look at anyone else. I mean, on TV is, you know, it's diminished, you know. I mean, John was an enormous personality, enormous person. And just seeing him on a little TV screen just didn't do him justice. But to see him in life, to see how his weight distributed through his body into his feet, very graceful guy for a man who got pretty big.
Yeah.
He could still do kips and back rolls and flips and stuff. Incredibly graceful, but the force of the guy was extraordinary. And he had incredible good gifts on an improvisational level, in that he could enter a scene with a group of people and know exactly what was supposed to be done. And he could just direct the action coming in. Just from watching it from the side, he'd go, and he'd come in, and he would move the action where it had to go. He was very talented. I mean, extremely talented guy.
To the point where it almost sounds like even guys like you, or maybe Aykroyd, you can't speak for him, as good as you guys were, was he the...
Oh, John was the best.
Was he the center of it?
John was the best on the stage there ever was. For some reason, TV, although he was great on TV, it wasn't really his medium in a way. I mean, he was in films, he was in TV, but on stage, John had no match. None. No match.
I take it not as an invited guest.
No, I think everybody's invited to their funeral. I'm sure they wanted everyone there. They were both extraordinary things to see. I wasn't really a big Elvis guy, but I knew that there was something that would never happen again. And so I really hustled my way to Memphis, and I was the 26th person on standby on the last flight out at like midnight from LaGuardia to Memphis, and I got on. And I just went to the place, and I ended up befriending somebody and getting to ride in the bus, the press bus that left Graceland right in front of the hearse. And that's a long story, but basically got to ride the funeral procession right in front of the hearse, and to see people We've been parked on the side of the road, waiting there for hours, sitting in the shade underneath aqueducts, waiting. And every Burger King and Dairy Queen and everything with a changeable sign said, "Long live the king," and "God bless the king," and "We will miss you," and "We will love you." It was very emotional. And arrived at the cemetery, and there were helicopters everywhere, and then you heard that there was a riot, and people were storming the gates.
Yeah.
So I started running. And which way's the gate? And I started running. And I'm running, 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 and I'm running. And all of a sudden, I'm stopped, and all these motorcycles come around the corner, and it's the hearse, and I'm standing on his mother's, not on her grave, but right there at the mother's grave. And every car that comes by is looking, going, "There's Mom," and "Who's that guy?" You know? And the cops looked at me with a look like said, "If you move, we will kill you. If you make a move towards anything or anyone here, we will kill you."
Yeah.
And I just froze. And so then they all rolled by, and then I ran back, and they tried to lift Elvis's casket into this thing. He had like roses this high on top of this, and the casket weighed like 1,200 pounds or some incredible thing. And there were like 8 guys trying to lift this thing, and the casket's going whoa and falling, and the roses are, and you know, they almost couldn't handle it. It was a really heavy thing, you know. But I remember when Priscilla's car went off, I actually felt like a lower body thing go that way, and I realized the king went with, you know.
So was it more touching than it was amusing, or was it equal parts?
It wasn't amusing. It wasn't really amusing because it was so sincere. It was completely sincere. It was completely human. And I mean, the only thing that was really amusing that I can say was the thing that made me laugh was afterwards I went back to Graceland, and people were buying and selling already in a frenzy the newspapers of the day, you know. And a car rolled in with Michigan license plates on it. It was like a bone crusher or something, one of those Daytona kind of jobs where the muffler had been damaged, and the car was just an absolute wreck. And there were 2 guys sitting in, and it would just look like they'd been driving for 4 days from Michigan, and hair really all over their face and dirty and grimy. And the car pulls in, this idling bad muffler. The guy looks over at me and says, "Is there a reception?" And that really said it all. I mean, people really felt like I'm here to, you know, are there going to be cold cuts, you know?
And a different rock icon, whole different circumstances, Lennon.
Oh, yeah, John Lennon. So that was it wasn't exactly his funeral. I think he was buried or cremated privately, but there was a funeral service in Central Park that Yoko staged, and what she wished was that there'd be 10 minutes of silence. You know, so it was a strange thing to be in Central Park and all of a sudden to see recreated all these people from before the earth changed, you know. All of a sudden it was like a rock concert from 10 or 15 years before, and their people, it was like Zapata's army in a very real sense. You went, my God, look at him. I haven't seen him or this type of person. All these people who just came out of wherever they'd been for 10 or 15 years, and you just felt like an army that was reassembling because the general had asked you to be at this place. And it was an incredible feeling like you were being pulled on a string to the place where it was. And I was with my wife, and we were pulled into this place, and we collided with this friend of mine and his wife, 2 of our close friends. And it was like we were supposed to be right there, you know? So then there was the service, which was supposed to be 10 minutes of silence. So people sat in silence. Only you heard these helicopters everywhere, you know? And they didn't seem to move. They seemed to be absolutely frozen, of course. And there was total silence. And then the service ended. The silence ended, and it just ended with the playing of the first, with Imagine, with that piano coming in over it. And it just tore you apart. It just, all of a sudden, everyone was crying. It was like that beautiful piano part in Imagine There's No Heaven, and people just went. They just fell apart. and then it began to snow for no reason at all. Just like after Belushi's funeral, it began to snow for no reason at all. It wasn't in the forecast. It wasn't really cold enough. There were no clouds. It just began to snow.
Can't get Van Morrison out of my head, but our thanks to Bill Murray. And tomorrow night, Mel Brooks. Back in, what was it, 1991? Yep, 1991. I like to bring the staff in. Back in 1991, he was our guest for an entire week. You'll get the Cliff Notes tomorrow, a half hour with Mel Brooks. Until then, see you later.